For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark. I'm a lifestyle financial planner, and I'm building a life that I don't necessarily need to retire from. But that's not the topic for today's talk. That's next week. Your rich life now, which we'll get into then. But just before we get going, some quick housekeeping. This is an informal discussion. Please jump in whenever you feel like it. If you've got any questions or any things you'd like to add, please just let us know. We're going to be running some polls so we can get a little bit of engagement and heading us into our different segments. Webinar should be around 45 minutes. We won't run over. If you need to log off, we'll be recording and we'll send it through to everybody who's registered. And then finally, so today's format is practical, is theory, not practical. I'm going to share some of my thoughts and ideas with you. And then Friday's session, if you're able to attend, is the practical session. So in that session, I've put an example together and I would take you through that. But alternatively, if you come to the session with an example, then we'd be able to use that as well. So with your live practical example. So before we get started, let's start with our first poll, Marcus. If you can bring that up for us. And the question here is how much do you currently save for future you, right? These are random percentages, right? Which the industry has kind of just dictated to us. And that's part of my problem with the industry is they've said it should be 5%, 10, 15, 20, random percentages. And then I guess the second part is, do you think it's enough? So it's kind of, are you doing enough? How much are you contributing? And what is your interpretation of enough? All right. So look, I think the percentage is really irrelevant. I think the greater value comes in answering the question is, do you think it's enough? And the answer to that is no, right? A resounding no. And that's probably why people are joining us today. Okay, so let's carry on from then, right? So what is the problem with retirement today, right? Why are we here having this conversation? And I think that's really what we want to address is, what is the problem, right? And my view is that most people arrive at retirement, which is a predetermined date, which is dictated to us by society, dictated to us by our employer, with a random pot of money, right? That may or may not be enough. And then what we tend to do is we try to fit in whatever is left of our life into whatever time we have left. So the time between when we retire and the time between when we die, which in our conversation today is potentially a 40-year period, right? And what we do with that time is largely dictated by how big or small that pot of money is. And how big or small that pot of money is determined by our ability to spend less than we earn and save the rest, right? I've used words like dictates because it's something that's pushed onto us. It's not really something that we participate in the current makeup of retirement. And it's kind of like gambling if you look at it. It's flipping a coin, heads I have enough money to live comfortably, tails I don't. And that's not exactly a retirement that I would want to build towards. I think it does come back to us sort of identifying what does comfortable even mean? So my comfort levels are completely different to yours, and yours different to mine, and different to each other, right? The word comfort levels in the context of traditional retirement is generic, right? It's kind of like the concept. It's work, predetermined date, stop, live, or try to, and then you die, right? So it's really not an ideal system. And what we've seen in our experience is that we kind of get three different types of retirees, right? Three people that arrive at retirement's doorstep, and those look like The first is those that just don't have enough, right? So they arrive there with not enough money to live the life that they want, simply can't do the things that they want to do because they don't have enough money, right? Now you move into retirement and you are forced to live frugally. You are budgeting extensively. You know, we advocate budgeting, but you don't want to live your life in retirement having to count every penny, having to cut coupons, as they would say. And ultimately, this leads to a diminished experience in retirement, and potentially one where you'll end up relying on family or kids, which tends to impact their retirement as well, right? Because if they're having to provide for you and themselves and their kids, they aren't able to fully provide for their own retirement into the future. So those are the not enoughs, right? Then we have the those that arrive at retirement with too much, right? And this may sound silly, but if you retire, or if you arrive at retirement with too much money, that generally means that you didn't do all the things that you wanted to do when you were younger, right? And this is all because you didn't know. So you've lived frugally up until retirement, right? And now you've arrived there with a pot of money that's large, but it's excessive, right? So you've missed out on living a great life up until retirement. The other thing that it means is that you are going to pay SARS a lot more money when you die, unfortunately. You've paid all your taxes along the way. Now you get to retirement, you live your retirement, but because you've got too much money, you're going to have to pay estate duty on whatever is left. And that number basically is anything over 3.5 million, you're paying 20% onto SARS. So why would you live frugally up until retirement and then have too much money that you can't spend and then pay it away to SARS? It's not ideal, and it's not something that you'd want to do. And lastly, we have the people that arrive at retirement with just the right amount of money, right? So these are the people that have enough money in their buckets to do the things they want to do when they want to do them. They can live life on their terms, and they can do all the things they want to do, and they live comfortably, their version of comfortably, up until the day they die. And this is the group that we are trying to build. We are trying to build a group of people who get to retirement with just enough money. Not too much, not too little, but just enough to do the things that they want to do. This then takes us into our next question, right? How much is enough, right? And this is quite interesting to understand what that looks like. So how much money do you need to comfortably retire? Marcus, if you can bring that up for us. So how much do you need to comfortably retire as a lump sum? What would you assume that number looks like? And then separately to that, how much do you plan to spend per month in retirement?
So these are actually difficult questions.
Yeah, it's things that do require some thought, right? And that's the whole concept here is, you need to think how much would you need as a lump sum? How much do you plan to spend monthly? How do you plan to spend your time in retirement? Right? What do you actually want to do with your time? And where would you want to spend your retirement, right? So these are things that people don't tend to think about. They just tend to ignore. So some scary stats on this. If you look at some of the options here, so if you think you need about 5 million rand in retirement, right? If you retire at 60 and live to 100, 5 million rand is only going to provide you with 15,000 rand a month before tax. So 15,000 rand a month before tax, increasing at South African inflation around 6% for 40 years. I'm not sure how many people could live with 15,000 rand. Then if you look at 10 million, okay, the number kind of doubles, right? So if you got 10 million, you can have 30,000 Rand. It provides you 30,000 Rand a month before tax. I'm not really going to get into the calculations, but you can see, right? If you need 60,000 Rand a month, you need at least 20 million Rand saved up at retirement at age 60 to provide into retirement. If we look at the capital number, so if you're hoping to spend 30,000 Rand a month, we can see that you would need about 10 million Rand at retirement. So if you're going to spend 30,000 Rand a month for the next 40 years, you at least need 10 million Rand. And these are all pre-tax, the second lot, right? So these are pre-tax numbers. We haven't really dealt with the tax because there's many ways to be tax efficient. But if you look at it as we go down, so if you're looking to spend 90 to 100,000 Rand a month in retirement, which look is a lot, but it depends on, again, your comfort level. You need between 30 and 33 million Rand in today's money saved up for retirement, right, to get you from 60 to 40. Those are really big numbers. And I guess what we're not trying to do is trying to scare you, but we're just trying to get you to think about, as a lump sum, what would I need? What does that lump sum translate into as a monthly income? So how much money do I plan to spend? And the concept we'll get into is, when am I going to spend what amount of money? Is it all in the beginning, all at the end, some in the middle? Is it the same number throughout? We're just trying to give more thought to this retirement. You know, those brand numbers coupled with your time, right? How you plan to spend your time, traveling, kids, grandkids, working. Not sure if you plan to work. Many people say that they will work, and that's probably because they feel like they're forced to work. They're going to have to work because they haven't made enough provision along the way. And then where do you want to spend your time, right? So the answer to how much is enough takes us into the concept that we want to share today. And this concept is the connection of connecting with our future selves. So we need to connect with our future selves in a way that is practical, right? It's a way that clearly articulates the life that we want to live at retirement. I believe that by doing this, not only will we be able to plan for our retirement financially, but we can also connect with our retirement personally. So it's articulating how we want to spend our two most precious resources in retirement, and those are time and money. Right. So if we know how we want to spend our time, we'll know how much money we need in order to facilitate the spending of our time, right? So it goes back to, what do you want to do in retirement? If we can visualize the things that we want to do, we can then break it down and understand how much it will cost us to do those things and how much capital we would require to fund the doing of those things, right? So I'm proposing, a scenario which says, let's break down retirement into different phases. Phases which are based on the activities that you want to do at different stages in your life, right? And if we look at the example of retirement being from 60 to 100, again, people say, oh, Mark, I never want to live to 100. And I think it's, if we look at those pictures that we did of me and Marcus, it's you may not want to live to 100 because you don't think you have enough money to, right? But if you envisage yourself at different stages in retirement, you can envisage what your health's going to look like. It impacts everything, right? And you can envisage how much money you would need at those stages. So, if I said to you, you've got enough money to do all the things you want to do, for me, I wouldn't mind getting to 100, right? If I could live comfortably, if I could live with dignity, if I could do everything I want to do at age 100, look, given that the things I want to do at 100 are not going to be the things that I want to do at 60, but that's the whole point, right? It's what are those things I want to do at 100? And I think that takes us nicely into sort of the timeline concept that we're looking at. It's to say, look, if we retire from 60 to 70, we've sort of, I've called it, this would be a selfish time, right? So from age 60 to 70, let me prioritize myself, right? Typically what happens is we make a lot of sacrifices along the way. You get to retirement, and now you want to do all of the things that you've put off doing, right? So let's assume that's the scenario, because that's most of people's realities. So for 10 years of your life from age 60 to 70, you get to be selfish, right? You get to do all of the things you want to do whenever you want to do them without having to answer to anybody, right? So most of the time that looks like travel locally, abroad. It looks like rest, right? A lot of people just want to rest, relax, do nothing. It looks like going to spa days, restaurants, golf. It's really living the life that you didn't live up until retirement, which is the problem, because you've delayed living. But now we're going to say, okay, great, if you have delayed living for these 10 years, you're going to live, right? So selfish time, it's me, my spouse, going to do all the things that I can do, because realistically from 60 to 70, that's probably when your body is physically able to do the most, right? 70 to 80, it's going to take its bit of a toll. And 80 to 100, as we saw in the picture, it's not going to be the easiest of times to do those things. So 60 to 70 is the selfish years, right? 70 to 80 could be what we've called the selfless years, right? So, if you've now done all the things you didn't get to do, you're at age 70, and for the next 10 years, it's selflessly giving of yourself to others, right? My view would be that you're now going to spend time with the people that matter most to you, right? You're getting on in the years, but you want to be there for your family most of the time. If you've got kids, you'd potentially have grandkids, so you would want to be present in their lives. And I think the way that you allow yourself to do this is by having those 10 years of being selfish. You've done all that stuff. You've ticked all the boxes. You've jumped out of an airplane. You've traveled to different countries. Now you can really be present in your children's lives, your grandchildren's lives, your spouse's lives. So it's giving of yourself and your time to others. And then 80 to 100 is really we've deemed or called it self-care, right? And not self-care in the sense of, looking after your, health and meditation and those things. It's really in the sense that 80 to 100, you're probably going to be pretty fragile, right? You're going to need assisted care, and it's called it self-care because by planning ahead for it, you're able to put yourself in the best position to have others care for you, right? And this is ensuring that you've got all the care that you need at your side for these, say, final years, but it's potentially a 20-year period, which is quite a long time. But what we're doing here is we're thinking about how we want to spend our time. So between 60 and 100, it's a long time. It's 40 years, right? If you look at it in relation to the rest of your life, it's equal to the time that most people spend working, right? So if you look at the first 20 years, you're learning, you're growing up, you're studying, you're doing school things, varsity, and then from 20 to 60, most people are working, right? They're just head down, grinding, working, and then you arrive at retirement and you've got another 40 years. What are you going to do? Everything else up until that point is outlined for you, right? This is what you're supposed to do: primary school, high school, varsity, start working, climb the corporate career, get married, have kids, buy the house, do this. It's all like outlined, right? And then you get to retirement and it's like, okay, great, now figure it out. And we're saying let's think about it more, right? Let's figure it out differently. And it's by almost re-engineering your retirement, right? So looking at it and saying, this is how I want to spend my time in the different phases. The upside to doing that is, if you know how you want to spend your time, you then know how much it's going to cost. So you may not know, but you can go do the work. And then working with us, we could sit down and do that work. It's to say, all right, so we start the other way around now to say, from 80 to 100, let's look at self-care, right? So if I'm 80, we showed that picture of me with my earring and, you know, my neck that looks 80, right? If that's what I look like, and, you know, all the other things that my body's going to look like and feel like, and the care that I'm going to need, where would I want to be? Right? Do I want to be by myself in the house that I grew up in? Do I want to be in a bedroom in my children's house, right? Because I haven't made enough provision, so I've had to move in with my kids at age 80. I've potentially got my kids, you know, assisting out with my ability to go to the bathroom, to look after myself. You know, if I had the choice, I would not want that. And I believe we all have the choice, right? It means we're gonna have to make some decisions, but we've all got that choice. That's what we're trying to do here. So in an example, we're saying, look, from age 80 to 100, I would want to be in a retirement village, right? I would want to be in, look, not a retirement village like my grandparents were in, right? But I think times have changed a lot. I would want to be in a facility where initially I've got my own, say, 2-bedroom apartment. I've got space, I've got garden, I've got a clubhouse, but importantly, I've got a assisted living center. Right? So I've got access to frail care if I need. I've got access to people who can come and assist me if I need. That for me would be a dignified last 20 years, right? I'd be able to have people around. I'll be proud of the space that I live in. And I'd still be able to do things, right? Because in this facility, and I'm thinking of a specific place in a hypothetical situation, but Waterfall Retirement Village is amazing. You know, we had clients there and I used to go visit them when I was still in Joburg, and it was a great place to retire. You know, they could cook at home, they could go to the clubhouse and have meals. If they needed assistance, they could get a nurse down to help. There were activities that were arranged. This is a dignified retirement. They could have their family around. That's where I would want to spend my time. But knowing now where I want to spend my time, I know how much it's going to cost, right? So I know that I would need a home there, right? And you don't want to be paying a bond, so that home would need to be paid off. And if that asset was paid off, then it's just your day-to-day living costs, right? So you can start to price this phase of life. And we can price it in detail, right? We can do all the work now to understand what it's going to cost and then build in a buffer. But you can know that, you know, levies are going to cost you this, and included in those levies is access to frail care, access to meals, access to the activities. You can work out a budget to say, this is how we'd probably spend money. Would I need a full-time carer? Does that cost more? You know, petrol, electricity, you can cost the whole thing, right? And in my mind, I'm looking at it saying, okay, so, you know, self-care stage, 80 to 100. Let's assume that costs us 40,000 Rand a month. If we don't have any debt, right? 40,000 Rand in today's terms, that means we would look at spending over that period 9.6 million Rand, right, in today's terms, which is a big number, especially in the context of it only being the last 20 years, right? But now we know what it is, right? So for the last 20 years of our life, 80 to 100 in the self-care phase, it's going to cost us 9.6 million Rand. Right? That's what it is. If we want to live dignified till the end, we need 9.6 million Rand. If we then go back to the selfless phase, so from age 70 to 80, where we are spending time with our family, spending time with our kids, our grandkids, you know, traveling up and down. Hopefully there's depending on how you want to live, there could be a beach home or a holiday home where you get to spend time together. You get to bring the family together at these places. You really envisage what you want it to look like and what it's going to cost, right? Same sort of concept, but if you look at it, if you've got a roof over your head, ideally paid off again, you know, you could anticipate, say, spending, I don't know, around 50,000 Rand a month then, right? Because you want to be able to do nice things for your kids, your grandkids. But if you look at that, that's a 10-year period. If you're spending 50,000 Rand a month, that's 6 million Rand that you would then need for those 10 years. You know, so we've got 9.6 from 80 to 100. We've got 6 million from 70 to 80. That's already like 15 million Rand that you need. And we're slowly working our way to this number of how much is enough. Right? And the important thing here is how you choose to spend your self-care and selfless times dictates what that number needs to look like. So this is just my scenario. This is potentially how I would want to spend my retirement. But the numbers are relevant to exactly the way that I want to spend, right? So 9.6 for 80 to 100, 6 million for 70 to 80. And then we get to the selfish years, right? Which is 60 to 70. And this is the years where you're really going to spend, right? So you're going to do all the things you didn't do. In a perfect world, you're going to travel, you're going to play golf, go shopping. There's nothing that you don't want to be able to not do, right? It's too many negatives there. But you're going to, if you want to go for lunch, you're going to go for lunch. In my selfish years, if I want to travel, I want to travel. I don't want to have to think about, do I have enough money to do it? Or what about when I'm 80, is there going to be enough? I've taken care of that, right? So this is budgeting to do all the things I want to do. Again, assume there's a roof over your head. But in this scenario, if we're going to spend around 70,000 Rand a month, which would then mean for those 10 years, you're looking at an amount of 8.4 million Rand that you would need to fund those 10 years. Again, these sound like big numbers, but it's based on a certain standard of living, which you get to decide what that looks like. I think that's the beauty of this is, it's my how much is enough is completely different to your how much is enough. The concept, though, is what's important. It's breaking down retirement into different phases, understanding how you want to spend your time in those different phases, and then costing it. So it takes work and it takes effort, but if you cost it, you'll then know what you need to do. And if we know how much each phase is going to cost, then we can get into the nitty-gritty and dig even deeper and figure out what are the most effective ways to fund each phase. Because if this is my retirement, looking at this, it is pretty scary, right? I'm 38, and if I think that I need, what's that, 15, that's like 25 million Rand to live the perfect retirement, that's scary. Like, I don't know where I'm going to come up with 25 million Rand. But now that we know that's what we need, and we don't need it all, we don't need all of it at age 60. We've got different phases in which to accumulate the different pots of money. But we could dig into it, right? So if we, as an example, how you could potentially look at funding these things. If you look at the self-care phase, so we know we want to be in a retirement village, let's call it Waterfall. We want access to frail care, we want the clubhouse, we want the bowls green, we want the bar, we want everything, right? We know that we need a unit there, right? And I went and did some research, and a unit in Waterfall is going to cost you anything between 2.5 million and 5 million Rand today, right? So if you wanted to move in there now, you could buy a unit, right? But if we envisage that you are, say, 40, right? You've still got, effectively, you've got 40 years before you're going to actually move into Waterfall, right? So till you hit this self-care phase of your life. So that's 40 years for you to plan how to come up with a 9.6 million Rand plus a property. It's a long time. But what you could do is, if you looked at it now, so you take 3 million Rand, let's go middle of the road, 3 million Rand, and you purchase a property there, right? And you bond it outright. So 3 million Rand, that's a 30,000 Rand bond. You bond it for 20 years, that would take you from 40 to 60. But then what you do is you rent it out, right? So you can rent these homes because there are people who haven't done sufficient planning, as we're proposing you do, and they need places to rent, right? And these are nice units. These are not your typical, old age home stories. There's a difference between an old age home and a retirement village. So to expect to pay 30,000 Rand as a rental for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double garage, private garden unit is not unheard of in a facility that provides you with everything that you need, right? It's definitely possible, but let's assume that it works. So 3 million Rand bond, 30,000 rental, and you rent it out for The first 20 years, right, 40 to 60, that then covers your bond, right? So when you get to 60, that asset is completely paid off and it didn't cost you anything, maybe a little bit additional on levies and things per month. But then you've still got another 20 years for you to keep collecting rent from this asset, right? So first 20 years it's paid off, you get to 60, you're still renting it out, you're only going to move into it at age 80, in a perfect world. You've got 20 years that you can keep renting this asset out and saving that income, right? So, we could get into the numbers in Friday's session, but, theoretically, you would be able to fully fund the last 20 years of your life without it costing you anything, all by planning ahead, right? And the only reason you can plan ahead is because you figured it out. You've figured out how you want to live. So for the first 20 years, that asset pays for itself, it pays the bond. And the next 20 years, that asset collects 30,000 Rand a month, building up to that number that we need of 9.6 million. Right? We'll go through the practical example, but what I'm getting at is that phase of your life could cost you nothing, right? All because you planned ahead now, right? So you bonded the property, you put a tenant in, it paid for itself, and then it collected rent over the next 20 years, and that rent funds your lifestyle for the last 20 years, right? Which has now removed 9.6 million from the equation. Good, because 9.6 is scary, and now we're down to 15 million, right? So now we need 15 million for retirement. If we then move into the selfless years, so this is spending time with grandkids, fetching and carrying them, holidaying with your family. We know, what you want that to look like. Is it a house at the bush? Is it a house at the beach? Is it just your suburban house? Whatever it is, you can plan for that property. It would potentially be the property that you're in now. So you can use that asset to fund the next asset, right? The sale of that house could then allow you to purchase a different property. But by understanding where you want to live and how much income you'll need, right, puts you in a position to figure out how to fund it. If we go back to the example of spending 50,000 Rand a month during that period, 70 to 80, we know you'll need at least 6 million Rand to fund this, right? So you're now 40, you've got 30 years to fund the equivalent of 6 million Rand, which is not that scary, right? I did some calculations, but if you are trying to get to that total of, I think we said it was 6 million Rand, that's roughly 14,000 Rand a month that you need to put away, right? Between age 40 and age 60. So if you put 14,000 Rand a month away for the next 20 years, you'll comfortably get to that stage of the selfless years with your 6 million Rand. So it's not a huge, well, that's irrelevant, right? The size of the sacrifice is irrelevant. The idea is that you know how much you need. We can work back and say, in order to arrive at that number, how much do I need to be putting away? So we've got self-care figured out, we've got selfless figured out, and then the selfish years, so that's 10 years of spending money on you and the things that you didn't get to do during your retirement, traveling, having fun, whatever you want to do, right? And this is probably the most expensive part of retirement, but it's probably going to take the most discipline, because in order to fund on top of the 6 million Rand, so the 14,000 that you're saving for that, you need to fund another, what was the number, 8.4 million. So it's potentially double those premiums that you need to put away, which is not easy, but it's an understanding. And if you understand how much you need, you get to make the decisions as to what you do, right? So we've got 15,000. You want another 8.4, it's potentially another 20,000. So that's 35,000 that you need to be saving. That could be doable. It could not be doable, right? But you've got the ability at age 40 to figure out if you can make it work. And if you can't make it work, then you adjust your expectation of what you want retirement to look like in those stages. Because remember, self-care is taken care of, right, through a smart option. Selfless is also taken care of. It's then selfish years. And I guess it's the trade-off between how we live now, between how we live then, to figure out how you fund that. But the concept here is really just giving us something to look forward to, right? Something to retire towards, and not just something that we retire from. We see so many people approaching retirement, and I ask the question, what are you going to do? And they have absolutely no idea, right? Because they just haven't given it thought. There hasn't been any time to think about it. There's just been this like building up of working to 60 or 63, and then I'm just going to stop. But that doesn't exactly like promote a willingness to save, right? If you know that, if I knew that this was my retirement, geez, I would be motivated to save. If I knew for 10 years I was going to get to spend 70,000 Rand a month without any debt or any commitments, geez, I think I would be able to save the money, right? I'd be able to make the potential sacrifice or go out and do the things I need to do, because that's the number that's on the table. 70,000 Rand a month for 10 years. That sounds amazing. All the things I could do with 70,000 Rand a month, that's something to look forward to. And then if we look at the next 10 years, hopefully they're grandkids, but being able to be present in my children and grandchildren's lives, being able to take them on holiday, being able to fetch and carry, watch them play sport. Again, that's something that's important to me, and it's something that I would look forward to. So having a retirement that you get to look forward to makes it so much easier to connect with that future you, and it makes it easier to save and potentially make hard decisions now, or just make decisions, right? We don't know what resources you have available, but you know what resources you do need available to you, so you can go out and do what's necessary, right? The other side of it also is that if you know how you want to spend those years, right, from a health perspective, you know that the choices you make now are either going to enable that or not. So if you're going to have your selfish years, you know that your body needs to be in pretty good nick in order to enjoy that. And so that's going to influence the decisions you make now. Do you stop smoking because you want to enjoy time there? Do you go to the gym? Do you do some form of exercise? Because you don't want to get to those years and not be able to do the stuff. Now you've got the 70,000 Rand a month, but your body's not willing or able to do the things. You can't get on an airplane. So the knock-on effect to this concept is far reaching, further reaching than just about the money. It's influencing your decisions today about your health and how you're going to arrive at retirement. A retirement that you get to look forward to, right? In my opinion, it's a win-win. It just takes foresight and the desire to want to do it. It may seem scary when you throw around numbers like that, but once you know what the numbers are and the life you want to live, you can then plan for it, and we can figure out ways to do it. So my closing part would be to kind of get your head out of the sand like the ostrich, and envisage the retirement you want, and then we can plan for it. It's literally yours for the taking. It's there to be had if you're prepared to do the work, and you don't need to be a victim of your own circumstances. You can take control and really re-engineer retirement from the end to the start, and make the decisions that you need to make today in order to get there. So that is 2 minutes after. A lot of talking, but thank you for taking the time to be here. We appreciate it. Friday, we will have a practical session, so I will go through this scenario in detail. And if you have any questions or any things you would like us to address, or if you have a scenario how you would like to live your retirement, bring that along, and we can work through it. Otherwise, thank you very much. I appreciate the effort and prioritizing yourself. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for everyone who joined.
It was awesome. Very interesting.
Thanks, Jackie.
And scary on the photo. I'm sorry to say, I'm not going to look like that at 100. No, it was frightening. My soul, my eyes are hanging by my chin.
I think it's, the idea is that it's, if that's how you look like, what do I need to do today from a health perspective to make sure I don't look like that?
Marry a plastic surgeon.
That's yeah, or make sure we save enough money to fund the surgery, right?
Exactly. But thank you, gentlemen. It was really interesting. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie.
Bye.
Thanks for the
Have a
input.
nice day.
Cheers.
Okay,
You
bye.
too.